The red line train lurched forward, and Maya Chen gripped the overhead rail, her canvas bag full of art supplies digging into her shoulder. 6:45 a.m. Same train, same car, same spot near the door where she could sketch the other passengers when the light hit right through the grimy windows. 3 years in Chicago, and she'd mapped her life around the L train schedule. Wake at 5:30. Shower in the apartment she shared with 2 roommates who barely acknowledged her existence. Grab whatever was cheapest at the corner store. Catch the red line north to the community center in Rogers Park where she taught art classes to kids whose parents worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. The train smelled like coffee and exhaust and the particular desperation of people heading to jobs they needed but didn't want. Maya found strange comfort in it. Predictability, routine, safety in the ordinary rhythm of a city that didn't notice her. She pulled out her sketchbook, a battered thing held together with tape and hope, and began drawing the woman across from her. Tired eyes, scrubs under a winter coat, probably a nurse finishing a night shift. Maya's charcoal moved quickly, capturing the weight of exhaustion in the curve of the woman's shoulders. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The train filled at each stop, bodies pressed closer. Maya shifted her bag, protecting her sketchbook, and that's when she noticed him. Elderly man, maybe 70, with weather-worn brown skin and white hair. He wore a janitor's uniform under a coat too thin for February in Chicago, and he clutched a worn lunch bag like it contained something precious. He'd gotten on at Fullerton, moving slowly, apologetically, taking the last available seat near the back. Maya had seen him before, not every day, but often enough to recognize him. He always sat quietly, never bothered anyone, sometimes read a Spanish-language newspaper with careful concentration. 3 stops later, they got on. 4 young men, early 20s, wearing expensive sneakers and attitude like armor. They moved through the car with predatory confidence, loud voices cutting through the morning quiet. Maya's stomach tightened. She knew this energy, had felt it before in 100 different variations. Men who needed to prove something, who found power in making others smaller. They gravitated toward the back of the car, toward the elderly man. "Yo, old man," the tallest one said, his voice carrying, "That's my seat." The elderly man looked up, confused. "Pardon? He don't even speak English." Another one laughed. "Probably illegal. Taking jobs from real Americans." Maya's hand tightened on her sketchbook. Around them, other passengers suddenly found their phones fascinating. Eyes down, headphones in, the universal language of pretending not to see. "I just want to get to work," the elderly man said quietly, his English heavily accented but clear. "No trouble, please." "You hear that?" The tall one mimicked his accent, cruel and exaggerated. "No trouble. Maybe you should go back where you came from, abuelo." One of them knocked the lunch bag from the elderly man's hands. It hit the floor, and Maya saw a carefully wrapped sandwich spill out, along with a small Tupperware container and an apple. The elderly man bent to retrieve it, his movements stiff with age and dignity, trying desperately to survive humiliation. The tall one put his foot on the lunch bag, ground it slowly into the dirty train floor. Something in Maya's chest cracked open. She'd spent 26 years making herself small, quiet, unnoticeable, the middle child in a family that barely had enough attention for the favorite and the problem. The scholarship kid at an art school where everyone else's parents funded their dreams. The invisible teacher in a system that paid her poverty wages and expected gratitude. She'd perfected the art of not being seen. But watching that elderly man's lunch being destroyed, seeing him bend with quiet shame while everyone pretended not to witness it, something shifted. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. "Maya, don't make trouble. Maya, keep your head down. Maya, why can't you just let things go?" She couldn't let this go. Maya pushed through the crowded car, her small frame weaving between bodies. Her heart hammered against her ribs, adrenaline making her hands shake, but her voice came out steady. "Leave him alone." Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The 4 men turned toward her. The tall one, who'd been grinding the lunch bag under his shoe, smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "What'd you say, sweetheart?" I said, "Leave him alone." Maya's voice didn't waver, even though every survival instinct screamed at her to back down. "He's just trying to get to work. You're being cruel for no reason." "Cruel?" The tall one stepped closer. He had at least 6 inches and 50 pounds on her. "I think you need to mind your business, little girl." "I'm making it my business." Maya held his gaze. You want a seat? There's one right there. She pointed to an empty spot 2 rows up. But you don't actually want a seat. You want to feel big by making someone else feel small. The train had gone silent. Everyone was watching now, though most still pretended not to. You got a mouth on you, another one of the men said. Somebody should teach you when to shut it. The elderly man stood up slowly. Miss, please. Is okay. I stand. No problem. It's not okay. Maya didn't look away from the tall one. And you shouldn't have to stand because these guys decided to be assholes before breakfast. The tall one's smile vanished. You just called me an asshole? I called you all assholes, Maya corrected. It's a factual observation. What happened next happened fast. The tall one reached for her arm. Maya stepped back, but there wasn't room in the crowded car. Her back hit someone's chest, solid and immovable, and hands steadied her shoulders, stopping her backward momentum. I'd reconsider that action. The voice behind her was low, calm, and carried the kind of authority that made the temperature in the car drop 10 degrees. Maya felt the stranger's hands release her shoulders, but he didn't step away. He stayed close, a presence at her back that felt like a wall these 4 men suddenly had to reckon with. She turned her head slightly and caught a glimpse of him in the train window's reflection. Tall, easily 6'2", dark hair, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His face was all sharp angles and controlled intensity, with eyes so dark they looked black in the fluorescent train lighting, and he was staring at the 4 men with the kind of stillness that preceded violence. The tall one took a step back. We were just messing around, man. Didn't mean anything by it. Then I suggest you find another car to mess around in. The man's voice remained quiet, almost conversational, but there was steel underneath. Now. The 4 men looked at each other. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Then, without another word, they moved toward the door between cars and disappeared into the next one. The tension in the car released like a collective exhale. The elderly man was gathering what remained of his lunch, his hands trembling. Maya knelt beside him immediately, helping collect the scattered pieces. I'm so sorry, she said softly. Are you okay? You very brave, miss. His eyes were wet. Very, very brave, but also very foolish. Those boys, they could hurt you. They were hurting you. Maya carefully placed the ruined sandwich back in the lunch bag. The Tupperware had survived intact, and she handed it to him, gently. That's not okay. Most people, they look away. He accepted the container with shaking hands. They pretend not to see. But you see, you care. That is a rare thing. Maya felt tears prick her own eyes. She blinked them back, focusing on helping him to his feet. He took the seat again, and this time, no one bothered him. She straightened, suddenly very aware of her canvas bag askew on her shoulder, her sketchbook still clutched in one hand, and the fact that the man in the expensive suit was still standing beside her. She turned to face him properly. Up close, he was even more striking. Mid-30s, with the kind of face that could sell watches in magazine ads, sharp jaw, straight nose, eyes that assessed everything with unsettling precision. But it was the way he carried himself that caught her attention. Controlled power, like every movement was calculated, purposeful. Thank you, Maya said, her voice smaller now that the adrenaline was fading. For stepping in. His gaze moved over her face, studying her with an intensity that made her want to look away. But she didn't. Something in his expression held her still. You shouldn't have confronted them alone, he said finally. His voice was quieter now, almost gentle, but there was a note of something that might have been concern. That was dangerous. So was letting them humiliate that man. Maya lifted her chin. Sometimes the dangerous thing is the right thing. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. An idealist. A person with basic human decency. She adjusted her bag. There's a difference. In my experience, the two are often the same. He paused, and something shifted in his expression. You take this train every morning. It wasn't a question. Maya's stomach did an odd flip. How do you know that? I take this train every morning, he said simply. Same car. You stand by the door. You draw people. She should feel unsettled that he'd noticed her. Instead, she felt curious. I've never seen you before. I stand in the back, near the emergency exit. His eyes held hers. And I don't announce my presence the way you just did, by standing up to bullies. By revealing yourself as someone who cares more about justice than self-preservation. He said it like it was a dangerous character flaw. That makes you memorable. And in this city, being memorable isn't always safe. The train was slowing, approaching the Fullerton stop. Maya realized with a start that this was where the elderly man had gotten on, which meant it was probably where he'd get off. Sure enough, the man stood carefully, clutching his ruined lunch bag. He paused beside Maya, placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. "Gracias, Angel," he said softly. "God bless you." Then he shuffled toward the doors, and Maya watched him go, feeling the weight of his gratitude settle somewhere in her chest. When she turned back, the man in the suit was still watching her, not the elderly man's departure. Her, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "What's your name?" he asked. Maya hesitated, her mother's voice again. "Don't talk to strange men. Don't give out personal information. Don't make yourself a target." But he'd just helped her, stood beside her when everyone else had looked away. And there was something in his eyes, beneath the intensity, that looked almost like respect. "Maya," she said finally. "Maya Chen. Maya Chen," he repeated, like he was committing it to memory. He didn't offer his own name, and somehow, she got the impression that was deliberate. The train pulled into Belmont, her stop. Maya grabbed her bag more securely. "I should go," she said. "But thank you, really, for," she gestured vaguely, "being there. Be careful, Maya Chen." His voice followed her as she moved toward the doors. "Not everyone on this train is as easily deterred as those four." She glanced back at him, confused by the warning. But the doors were opening, and the crush of people exiting pushed her forward onto the platform. By the time she looked back through the window, he was gone. Just empty space where he'd been standing, like he'd evaporated into the crowd. Maya stood on the platform as the train pulled away, her heart still racing, hands still shaking with leftover adrenaline. Around her, people hurried toward their destinations, everyone focused on their own urgency. She'd just confronted 4 aggressive men on a train. She'd helped a stranger. She'd been helped by another stranger who somehow knew her routine but she'd never noticed before. The whole thing felt surreal. Maya started walking toward the community center, her mind replaying the encounter. The way the man in the suit had appeared exactly when she needed him. The way he'd spoken with such quiet authority. The way he'd looked at her like he saw something worth protecting. And his warning, "Not everyone on this train is as easily deterred." What did that mean? She pushed the question aside. She was probably reading too much into it. He was just another commuter, someone who'd witnessed something unjust and stepped in. That was all. But his eyes, the way they'd studied her face, like he was memorizing it. "You take this train every morning." How long had he been watching her? The community center smelled like tempera paint and floor cleaner. Maya dropped her bag in the supply closet that doubled as her office and tried to focus on setting up for the morning class. Her hands still shook slightly as she arranged brushes and paper. The adrenaline crash was hitting hard, making her feel shaky and slightly nauseous. "You okay?" Keisha, the center's director, appeared in the doorway. She was 50-something, with graying locks and the kind of warm but no-nonsense energy that came from decades of working with underserved communities. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just a weird morning on the train." Maya forced a smile. "I'm fine." Keisha's skeptical expression said she didn't believe that for a second. "Well, your weird morning needs to get its act together. The Martinez kids are already asking when Miss Maya is going to teach them how to draw dragons." Despite everything, Maya felt her smile become genuine. "Tell them 5 minutes. I need to grab more construction paper." The day passed in its usual blur. 12 kids between ages 6 and 10, all boundless energy and questions and enthusiasm. Maya loved this part of her life. Here, in this paint-stained room with these kids who looked at her like she hung the moon, she mattered. She was seen. She was necessary. Javier Martinez, 8 years old and obsessed with fantasy creatures, showed her his dragon with fierce pride. "Miss Maya, look, I gave him 3 heads like you said storytellers used to do. That's incredible, Javier." Maya knelt beside him, examining the painting with genuine admiration. "Look at the detail you put in the scales. Each head has a different expression. That's really advanced work." His smile could have lit the entire building. This was why she put up with the poverty wages and the tiny apartment and the ramen noodles for dinner. These moments, when a kid realized they could create something beautiful, when art stopped being intimidating and became possibility. By the time her shift ended at 3, Maya was exhausted but in a better emotional place. The morning's drama felt distant, like something that had happened to someone else. She caught the red line back south, standing in her usual spot by the door. The afternoon train was more crowded, filled with students and early shift workers heading home. Maya pulled out her sketchbook, found an empty page, and started drawing from memory. The elderly man's face took shape on the paper. She captured the lines around his eyes, the dignity in the set of his jaw even as those 4 men had tried to humiliate him. She added the worn hands clutching the lunch bag, the janitor's uniform, the thin coat. "You're very talented." Maya's hand jerked, leaving a charcoal smudge across the page. She looked up. He was standing beside her again. The man from the morning. Same expensive suit, same sharp features, same eyes that seemed to see too much. Maya's brain struggled to form coherent sentences. "How are you? Why are you on the afternoon train?" "I had business in the area." He gestured vaguely northward. "Thought I'd take the train back. And there you were, drawing." There was something in the way he said it. Too convenient. Too coincidental. "Are you following me?" The question came out before Maya could stop it. Instead of denying it or looking offended, he tilted his head slightly. "Would it frighten you if I said yes?" Her heart stuttered. "Should it? That depends on your definition of frightening." His gaze moved from her face to her sketchbook, to the drawing of the elderly man. "You capture more than just features. You capture essence. Character. That's rare. You're avoiding the question." Maya closed her sketchbook, sliding it into her bag. "Are you following me?" He was quiet for a moment. The train rocked through a turn, and they both swayed slightly with the motion. He compensated with effortless balance, like he'd spent his life moving through unstable spaces. "I've been aware of you for some time," he said finally. "This morning confirmed something I suspected. You're someone worth knowing." That's a really unsettling thing to say to a stranger. "We're not strangers anymore." The corner of his mouth lifted. "You're Maya Chen. You teach art to children at the Rogers Park Community Center. You live in Wicker Park, though your apartment situation isn't ideal. You eat lunch at the same Vietnamese place every Tuesday because they give you extra spring rolls. You send money home to California every month even though you can barely afford it." Maya's blood turned to ice. "How do you know all that?" "Because I make it my business. To know things." His expression didn't change, but something in his voice softened slightly. "And before you panic, understand that knowing doesn't mean threatening. I'm not interested in hurting you, Maya. Quite the opposite." "Then what are you interested in?" Her voice came out steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "Making sure you're safe." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "You have a dangerous habit of involving yourself in situations that could get you hurt. This morning was proof of that. So what, you're appointing yourself my bodyguard?" The absurdity almost made her laugh. "That's insane. You don't even know me." "I know you stood between an elderly immigrant and 4 men who could have seriously injured you," he said quietly. "I know you did it without hesitation, without thinking about the cost to yourself. I know that same quality has gotten you into trouble before. A homeless veteran being harassed by security outside a convenience store 2 months ago. A woman being followed by a drunk man near your apartment 6 weeks ago. You intervene, Maya. It's who you are." She stared at him. He'd been watching her for months, documenting her movements, her choices, her life. She should be terrified. The train was slowing as it approached Chicago Avenue, her stop. Maya grabbed her bag, her mind racing. "I don't know who you are," she said, backing toward the doors. "I don't know what you want, but stay away from me. I mean it. Whatever weird stalker thing you think you're doing, stop." "My name is Dante Romano," he said as the doors opened behind her. "And I can't stop, Maya. Not now that they've seen you." They who? But the doors were closing, and she was on the platform, and he was still on the train, watching her through the window with those dark, unreadable eyes. The train pulled away. Maya stood frozen on the platform, her heart pounding, every nerve ending screaming that something fundamentally dangerous had just entered her life. Dante Romano. She repeated the name in her head, trying to place it. It sounded Italian, European, expensive, like old money or old power or old something that didn't belong in her world of community centers and canvas bags. She walked home on autopilot, barely seeing the familiar streets. Her apartment building looked shabbier than usual, paint peeling, security door broken for the 3rd time this month. Inside, her roommates weren't home. The silence felt oppressive. Maya locked herself in her tiny bedroom and pulled out her phone. Her fingers hovered over the search bar. Then she typed, Dante Romano, Chicago. The results loaded, and Maya's entire world tilted sideways. The first result was a Chicago Tribune article from 18 months ago. The headline made Maya's stomach drop. Romano family maintains grip on Chicago's north side, despite federal investigation. She clicked, her hands trembling as she read. Dante Romano, 34, heir to one of Chicago's oldest and most powerful organized crime families, continues to operate with apparent immunity despite ongoing FBI surveillance. The Romano organization, which his grandfather established in the 1952, controls significant portions of Chicago's construction, waste management, and hospitality industries. Businesses, federal prosecutors, believe serve as fronts for money laundering, extortion, and racketeering. Unlike his late father, Vincent Romano, who ruled through visible brutality, Dante Romano has cultivated a reputation for calculated restraint. He's more dangerous because he's smarter, says former federal prosecutor Janet Williamson. He doesn't leave bodies, he leaves warnings, and people listen. Romano has never been charged with a crime. Witnesses routinely refuse to testify or recant statements. Evidence disappears. The few cases that have proceeded to trial have resulted in acquittals due to lack of cooperation from key witnesses. Maya stopped reading. Her vision blurred at the edges. The man on the train. The man who'd been watching her for months. The man who knew where she lived, where she worked, what she ate for lunch. He was a mafia boss. She dropped her phone on the bed like it had burned her. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. This couldn't be real. This was the kind of thing that happened in movies, not to broke art teachers who just wanted to help people. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Maya stared at it, her heart hammering. She knew, somehow she knew, it was him. She let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text appeared. Unknown. I understand you're frightened. That's intelligent. But I meant what I said. You're safe. I'll make sure of it. D.R. Maya's hands shook as she typed back. Maya, you're a criminal. Stay away from me. The response came immediately. Unknown. Yes. And the people who saw you on that train this morning work for someone who doesn't share my restraint. So no, I won't stay away. Not until I'm certain you're protected. Maya, protected from what? Unknown. From the consequences of your own kindness. Maya threw her phone across the room. It bounced off her pillow and landed on the floor, unbroken but now representing something contaminated. Connection to a world she wanted no part of. She paced her tiny bedroom, her mind racing. She should call the police. Tell them a mobster was stalking her. Except what would she say? That he'd helped her on a train? That he'd sent her a text message saying he wanted to keep her safe? The police would laugh. Or worse, they'd do nothing. And then Dante Romano would know she'd tried to involve them. Maya pulled up the Chicago Tribune article again, forcing herself to read further. The Romano family's reach extends throughout the city's infrastructure. Multiple aldermen have accepted campaign contributions from Romano-connected businesses. The Chicago Police Department's organized crime unit has struggled with internal corruption, with 2 detectives arrested last year for accepting bribes to provide advance warning of raids. So the police were compromised. Calling them might make things worse. Maya sat on her bed, pulled her knees to her chest, and tried to think rationally. What had actually happened today? She defended an old man. Dante Romano had stepped in to help. He'd revealed he'd been watching her. He'd warned her about someone seeing her on the train. Who had seen her? The 4 bullies? Were they connected to something bigger? Her phone buzzed again. She retrieved it reluctantly. Unknown. The elderly man you helped this morning is named Alberto Ruiz. He's a janitor at Northwestern Hospital. He has 3 grandchildren. He's worked in this city for 42 years. He's also completely innocent of any involvement in my world or anyone else's. You defended him because you're a good person. That quality has now made you visible to people who exploit good people. Maya, I don't understand. Unknown. One of the 4 men on the train works for the Castellano organization. They control the South Side. We have an understanding about territories. You embarrassed one of their low-level enforcers in front of witnesses. That creates complications. Maya, complications for you or for me? Unknown. Both. Which is why I'm addressing it. You won't see those 4 men again. But others may take interest in the woman who caught their attention. I'm ensuring that interest doesn't become a problem. Maya stared at the message. He was talking about gang territories and criminal organizations, like they were neighborhood associations. casually mentioning making people disappear. Maya, you're insane if you think I'm okay with any of this. Unknown. I don't need you to be okay with it. I need you to be safe. There's a difference. Maya, I was safe before you existed. Unknown. No, Maya. You were invisible. That's not the same thing. And as of this morning, you're not invisible anymore. She didn't respond. What could she possibly say to that? Minutes passed. Then another message. Unknown. I won't contact you again unless necessary, but know that you're being watched. My people, not theirs. You'll see them occasionally, different faces, always professional, never intrusive. They're there to ensure nothing happens to you. Try to live your life normally. And Maya, what you did this morning, defending Alberto Ruiz, was brave. Reckless, but brave. Don't let what I've told you make you regret that kindness. Maya read the message 3 times. Then she turned off her phone completely. The next morning, Maya almost called in sick. She stood in her kitchen, drinking bad coffee, staring at her canvas bag like it was a bomb. Getting on that train meant facing whatever Dante Romano's protection looked like. It meant accepting that her life had fundamentally changed. But it also meant not letting fear win. It meant not becoming the person who hid. Maya grabbed her bag and left. The walk to the L station felt different. Every person on the street became a potential threat or potential guardian. That man reading a newspaper on the bench, was he watching her? The woman in the business suit walking 10 feet behind, coincidence or surveillance? By the time she reached the platform, Maya's nerves were shredded. The red line arrived. She got on, moved to her usual spot by the door, and tried to breathe normally. The car was crowded with the morning rush. Maya kept her eyes down, focusing on her phone, trying to look like every other commuter absorbed in their device. But she felt it, that prickle of awareness that said someone was watching. She glanced up cautiously, scanning the car, and found him immediately. Dante Romano stood at the opposite end, partially hidden behind a cluster of passengers. He wore a different suit today, navy instead of charcoal, but he had the same controlled stillness that made him noticeable even in a crowd. Their eyes met across the distance. He nodded once, just a slight acknowledgement. Then he looked away, his attention shifting to something on his phone. Maya's heart raced. He'd said he wouldn't contact her unless necessary. But here he was, on her morning train, making his presence known. Was this supposed to be comforting? Because it felt like the opposite. The train stopped at Fullerton. Alberto Ruiz got on. Maya felt a surge of relief seeing him. He looked tired but unharmed, carrying a different lunch bag, this one newer. His eyes scanned the car with new wariness, finding her almost immediately. His face transformed with recognition and warmth. He made his way over slowly, holding the overhead rail as the train lurched forward. "Miss Maya," he said softly, "I hope to see you, to thank you properly." "You don't need to thank me." Maya's voice came out too tight. "I'm just glad you're okay. More than okay." He reached into his pocket, pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. "My daughter, she heard what you did. She made you this, as thank you." Maya unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small ceramic medallion, hand-painted with delicate blue and gold patterns. A religious image she didn't immediately recognize, but clearly meaningful. "Saint Christopher," Alberto explained. "Patron saint of travelers. For protection on your journeys." His voice dropped lower. "My daughter, she also said to tell you something. She said a man came to our apartment last night. Very polite, very respectful. He gave her money to replace my lunch, and he said that anyone who bothered her family would answer to him personally. She was frightened at first, but he was kind. He told her that her father had dignity and deserved respect, and that you had shown great courage protecting him." Maya's throat tightened. She glanced toward the other end of the car, but Dante had disappeared into the crowd. Or maybe he'd gotten off at the last stop. She couldn't tell. "I don't understand what's happening," Maya whispered. "Neither do I," Alberto admitted. "But I know this. You helped me when no one else would, and somehow that small kindness has created ripples. My daughter feels safe now. She said the man told her that our family is under protection. I don't know what that means in this city, but I choose to believe it's a good thing." He pressed the medallion into her palm, closing her fingers around it. "Keep this, for protection. And be careful, Miss Maya. I think you have caught the attention of powerful people. That can be blessing or curse." Alberto took a seat 2 rows back. Maya stood frozen, clutching the medallion. The train reached Belmont. Maya exited on autopilot, letting the crowd carry her up the stairs and onto the street. The morning air was sharp and cold. She walked toward the community center, her mind spinning. Dante Romano had gone to Alberto's family, had given them money and assurances, had extended his protection to an elderly janitor and his daughter because Maya had defended him on a train. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. What kind of criminal did that? 3 days passed. Maya went through her routine mechanically. Train in the morning, teach classes, train in the afternoon. She didn't see Dante Romano again, but she felt the presence of watchers, a different man on the platform each morning, always professional, always distant. A woman in a dark car parked outside her building. Someone in the Vietnamese restaurant where she ate lunch, sitting 2 tables away, ordering but never eating. It should have felt oppressive. Instead, it felt like living inside a strange bubble where nothing could touch her. On Friday, Keisha called her into the office. "Maya, we need to talk about something." The director's expression was serious. "I got a visit yesterday from a man who wants to make a substantial donation to our center, enough to fund the art program for the next 5 years. Maya's stomach dropped. "What man?" He didn't give his name, just said he was impressed by our work with underserved children and wanted to support arts education. Keisha leaned forward. "The thing is, Maya, he specifically asked that the funds be used to increase your salary and supply budget. He knew your name, knew exactly what you do here." "Oh God." Maya put her face in her hands. "So you know him?" "Not exactly." Maya looked up. "Did you take the money?" "Not yet. I told him I needed to discuss it with our board and with you." Keisha's expression was concerned. "Maya, honey, who is this man? Because that kind of money doesn't come without strings." "I don't know what the strings are," Maya said honestly. "I helped someone a few days ago, and somehow that caught his attention. Now he's, I don't know, protecting me? Inserting himself into my life? It's complicated. Complicated, dangerous, or complicated, confusing? Both." Maya twisted her hands together. "Keisha, if you don't take that money, I'll understand. I don't want to bring anything bad to this center or these kids." Keisha was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. "Baby, I've run this center for 23 years. I've seen every kind of complicated this city has to offer, and I've learned that sometimes money from questionable sources does genuine good." She held up a hand before Maya could protest. "I'm not saying I've decided. I'm saying I'll think about it. But Maya, you need to be careful. Men who make that kind of gesture aren't looking for nothing in return." "I know." Maya's voice was small. "Do you?" Keisha's tone sharpened. "Because you've got that look in your eye. That same look you get when you see something unjust and decide to fix it. Whatever's happening with this man, you can't fix him. You understand that, right? You can't save everyone. I'm not trying to save him. I'm just trying to understand why he's doing. Men like that don't need reasons we understand," Keisha said gently. "They operate on different logic. Just promise me you'll be smart about this," Maya promised, but she wasn't sure she could keep it. That night, Maya did something reckless. She'd spent days being watched, being protected, being managed by someone she'd barely spoken to, someone who'd inserted himself into her life and made unilateral decisions about her safety. She was done being passive. Maya pulled out her phone and stared at the unknown number that had sent her those messages. She'd saved it under Do Not Contact but hadn't deleted it. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she typed, "Maya, we need to talk, in person, not on a train, not with your people watching, just you and me." The response came within seconds. "Unknown. That's not a good idea. Maya, I don't care. You've involved yourself in my life. You've contacted my work. You've protected people I care about. You've had me followed for days. I deserve an actual conversation, not text messages and cryptic warnings. Unknown. Maya. Maya, tomorrow. Tell me where and when. Or I start asking very loud questions about who Dante Romano is and why he's suddenly interested in a community art teacher. I'm sure the Chicago Tribune would love that story. It was an empty threat. She'd never actually do it, but he didn't know that. The phone rang instead of texting. Maya answered, her heart pounding. "That's a dangerous bluff." His voice was exactly as she remembered. Low, controlled, edged with something that could be amusement or warning. "It's not a bluff." "Yes, it is. Because you're not reckless enough to paint a target on yourself by involving the press. But I appreciate the attempt. She heard what might have been a smile in his voice. You want a conversation? I deserve a conversation. Fair enough. Tomorrow night. 7 o'clock. I'll send a car. No. No cars, no drivers, no surveillance. Public place. Silence on the line. Then, the Art Institute. Main entrance. 7 o'clock. I'll be alone. Promise? I don't make promises I can't keep, Maya. But yes, just me. No security, no backup, no watchers. For 1 hour you'll get your conversation. Okay. Her voice shook slightly. Tomorrow. 7. Maya? His voice softened almost imperceptibly. What you're doing right now, demanding this meeting, challenging me, that's brave. But understand that bravery and recklessness look very similar from the outside. Be careful which one you're actually displaying. He hung up before she could respond. Maya sat on her bed, clutching her phone, wondering if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst. The Art Institute of Chicago at 7 p.m. on a Saturday night was moderately crowded. Tourists, art students, couples on dates, all wandering the galleries with that particular reverent quiet that museums demanded. Maya arrived 15 minutes early, wearing jeans and a sweater because she refused to dress up like this was a date. It wasn't a date. It was a confrontation. She waited by the main entrance, near the lion statues, watching people come and go. He arrived exactly at 7. Dante Romano walked up the steps with that same liquid confidence she'd noticed on the train. But tonight he wasn't wearing a suit. Instead, he dressed down in dark jeans, a black sweater, and a coat that looked expensive but understated. He looked younger this way, less intimidating, more human. Maya. He approached slowly, giving her space. Thank you for coming. You said I could have a conversation. I'm here for the conversation. Then let's walk. He gestured toward the entrance. I've always found it easier to talk while looking at art. Takes the pressure off making constant eye contact. Despite herself, Maya almost smiled. That's actually insightful. They paid admission, he tried to pay for both. She insisted on paying her own. They compromised by him not arguing further and entered the museum. Maya led them toward the modern wing, her favorite section. They walked in silence past paintings she'd seen dozens of times, pieces that usually brought her comfort. Tonight, she barely saw them. All her awareness focused on the man beside her. Dante stopped in front of a Rothko, one of the large color-filled paintings that people either loved or found boring. Maya had always loved them. The way simple colors could evoke complicated emotions. Ask your questions, Dante said quietly, his eyes on the painting. I'll answer honestly. Why me? The question burst out before she could organize her thoughts. You said you've been watching me for months. Why? What did I do to catch your attention? You fed a homeless man your lunch. His voice was matter of fact. 3 months ago, outside the coffee shop on Damon Avenue, you'd just bought a sandwich and coffee, probably the only meal you'd planned for the day based on your financial situation. And you saw a veteran sitting outside, sign asking for help, and you gave him your entire meal. Then you went back inside and bought yourself just a coffee so the staff wouldn't think you were loitering. You sat there for an hour, nursing that coffee, probably hungry, probably tired, but you didn't regret giving that food away. I watched you through the window and thought, this woman is either extraordinary or foolish, possibly both. Maya's breath caught. She remembered that day, remembered the veteran with kind eyes and shaking hands, remembered being hungry all afternoon. That's why you started watching me? Because I fed someone? Because you fed someone when you yourself were hungry. Dante finally looked at her, and his dark eyes held something she couldn't identify. Because you made that choice without hesitation, without expectation of recognition or reward. In my world, kindness is usually a transaction, but yours wasn't. That made you interesting. So I'm what, a curiosity? Some kind of pet project for a bored mobster? You're someone who reminds me that not everyone in this city is corrupt or corruptible. He turned back to the painting. That's rarer than you think. They moved to the next room, past Picasso's and Matisse's. You had me followed, Maya said. For months. You learned everything about my life. That's not protection, Dante. That's surveillance. Yes, he agreed simply. And if you'd lived your life quietly, continued being invisible, I would have eventually stopped watching. You'd have become a pleasant memory, proof that goodness still existed. But then you defended Alberto Ruiz in front of men who work for my enemies. You made yourself visible to people who exploit kindness. That changed everything. The Castellano organization, Maya said, remembering the text messages. One of those 4 men works for them. Worked, Dante corrected quietly. He doesn't anymore. The implication hung in the air between them. Maya felt cold. You, what did you do? Nothing he didn't deserve. Dante's voice remained calm. But nothing that will come back to you. He was relocated to another city with strong encouragement not to return to Chicago. The other 3 were reminded that certain people are under protection. They won't bother you again. You can't just move people around like chess pieces. Can't I? He looked at her with genuine curiosity. You live in a world where justice means calling the police, filing reports, hoping the system works. I live in a world where justice is more immediate and certain. My world isn't moral, Maya, but it's efficient. They stopped in front of a Hopper painting. Nighthawks, the famous one with lonely people in a diner, isolated despite being together. I don't want to be part of your world, Maya said softly. I know. Something in his voice shifted, became almost gentle. That's part of what makes you valuable. You're not trying to use me for protection or power or status. You actually want me to. Leave you alone. That's refreshing. Then why won't you? Because I can't. Dante turned to face her fully. The moment you defended Alberto Ruiz, you created a situation that requires response. In my world, everything is about perception and power. You embarrassed men connected to the Castellanos. If I don't protect you, I look weak. If I look weak, other families see opportunity. That creates chaos. Chaos creates violence. So protecting you isn't just about you anymore, Maya. It's about maintaining the fragile balance that keeps this city from burning. That's a really convenient rationalization. It's the truth. His dark eyes held hers. But it's not the only truth. The other truth is that I've spent months watching you be kind in a world that punishes kindness. And when I finally met you, you were exactly who I thought you'd be. Brave, reckless, honest. And I realized I didn't want anything bad to happen to you. Not because of territory or power or perception, just because you're someone worth protecting. Maya's heart did something complicated in her chest. This wasn't how mobsters were supposed to talk. They weren't supposed to be quietly intense and surprisingly honest. They weren't supposed to say things that made you question everything you thought about right and wrong. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. I don't need protecting, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Everyone needs protecting, Maya. You've just been lucky enough to be invisible until now. But invisibility is gone. So you have 2 choices. Accept my protection and continue living your life, or refuse it and hope the consequences aren't severe. But understand that once you're visible in my world, you don't get to become invisible again. That's not a choice. That's coercion. Yes, he agreed simply. It is. His honesty was somehow worse than lies would have been. They walked through more galleries. Maya's mind raced, trying to find a way out of this impossible situation. The donation to the community center, she said finally. That's too much. You're trying to buy something. I'm trying to ensure you can continue doing work that matters without worrying about money. Dante stopped in front of a sculpture, abstract curves of metal that somehow suggested motion. You're brilliant at what you do, Maya. Those children love you. You change their lives with art and attention and the belief that they matter. That work should be funded properly. Consider the donation an investment in something worthwhile. Nothing is worthwhile without strings in your world. The string is this. You keep being exactly who you are. You keep teaching those children. You keep making this city slightly less terrible. He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. That's the only string, Maya. Continue being the person who feeds homeless veterans and defends elderly immigrants and creates art that captures the essence of human dignity. If you can do that, the money is yours. No questions, no obligations. I don't believe you. I know, but take the money anyway. Those children deserve better supplies and you deserve a livable wage. Whether you trust my motivations is secondary to the actual good it will do. They'd completed a circuit of the modern wing and ended up back where they'd started, near the entrance. An hour had passed. Dante checked his watch, a simple gesture that somehow felt significant. Our time is up, he said. I promised you an hour without surveillance. My people are getting nervous by now. Your people? I wasn't entirely alone, Maya. I said no security, no backup, no watchers. I didn't say I was completely unprotected. There are 3 men stationed at different points around this building, with instructions to intervene only if someone tries to hurt me. Otherwise, They stayed far enough away to give us privacy. So you lied. No. I told you what you needed to hear to feel safe meeting me. There's a difference. He moved toward the exit, and Maya followed, hating herself for following but unable to stop. Outside, the night air was cold and sharp. Michigan Avenue stretched away in both directions, lights and traffic, and the endless motion of the city. A black car waited at the curb. Not an SUV like she'd seen outside her building, but a sedan. Expensive, subtle. "Can I give you a ride home?" Dante asked. "No. I'll take the train." "Then let me walk you to the station. I don't need an escort." "I know." He said it gently. "But I'd like to anyway. Consider it a courtesy, not an obligation." Maya wanted to refuse, but the truth was, having him beside her in the cold Chicago night felt safer than walking alone, and maybe that was the problem. Maybe that was exactly what he'd been counting on. They walked in silence toward the nearest L station. Halfway there, Maya stopped abruptly. "I don't understand you," she said. "You're a criminal. You hurt people. You run an organization built on violence and fear. But you talk like you're trying to protect the city, like you actually care about consequences and justice." Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. "My grandfather built this organization on violence and fear. My father maintained it the same way. They were brutal men who saw people as tools to be used or obstacles to be removed." He looked out at the city, at the lights reflecting off Lake Michigan in the distance. "I inherited their empire, but I didn't inherit their philosophy. I'm trying to run things differently. Less violence, more strategy. Less fear, more respect. It's harder this way. More complicated. But I've seen what pure brutality creates, Maya. It creates chaos and paranoia and a city that tears itself apart. So yes, I'm a criminal. But I'm trying to be a criminal who does. Less damage than the alternatives. That's still damage. Yes," he agreed simply. "It is." They reached the L station entrance. Maya stopped, pulling her transit card from her pocket. "Thank you for the conversation," Dante said formally. "And Maya, you asked why I'm doing this. Why I'm protecting you, funding your work, involving myself in your life. The simple truth is that I've spent years surrounded by people who want something from me. Power, money, protection, advancement. You're the first person in a very long time who wants nothing except to be left alone. That quality is so rare in my world that I find myself willing to do anything to preserve it. Even if preserving it means violating my boundaries and making decisions without my consent? Yes." He said it without apology. "Because the alternative is you getting hurt by people who won't appreciate your boundaries at all. I realize that makes me a hypocrite, but I'd rather be a hypocrite keeping you safe than morally consistent while you suffer consequences you don't deserve." Maya didn't know what to say to that, so she just turned and descended the stairs into the station. She felt his eyes on her back until she disappeared underground. On the train home, Maya stared at her reflection in the dark window and tried to understand what was happening to her life. A week ago, she'd been invisible. Nobody. Just another struggling artist in a city full of them. Now she was under the protection of a mafia boss who talked about justice and consequences, who'd been watching her for months because she'd fed a homeless man, who wanted nothing from her except that she continue being exactly who she was. It should feel oppressive. Instead, it felt like something else entirely, something dangerous and complicated and utterly impossible to ignore. Maya pulled out her phone and looked at the medallion Alberto had given her. Saint Christopher, patron saint of travelers, for protection on journeys. She had a feeling her journey had just gotten significantly more complicated. And somewhere across the city, Dante Romano was probably thinking the same thing. 2 weeks passed in a strange new normal. Maya went to work, taught her classes, rode the train. She didn't see Dante Romano again, but his presence haunted everything. The watchers were more subtle now. She'd learned to spot them only when she actively looked. A different face each day, always professional, always distant. Keisha had accepted the donation. The art program now had supplies Maya had only dreamed of. Real canvas instead of construction paper, quality brushes, paints that didn't come in children's sets. And Maya's salary had increased enough that she could afford groceries without checking her bank balance first. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like surrender. "Miss Maya, look." Javier Martinez held up a painting that actually looked like what he'd been trying to paint. A dragon, detailed and fierce, with scales that had dimension and color that showed real understanding of shading. "The new paints make everything better. You make everything better, Javier." Maya knelt beside him. The paints are just tools. Your talent is what creates the magic. But she knew the truth. Better supplies meant better art. And better art meant these children had opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. Dante Romano had bought that for them. She hated that it mattered. Hated that his criminal money was creating genuine good. After her shift, Maya walked to the Vietnamese restaurant where she always ate Tuesday lunch. Mr. Nguyen had her usual ready before she asked spring rolls and pho, the lunch special that cost $7, and filled her up for the afternoon. She ate slowly, sketching in her notebook between bites. The restaurant was quiet at 2 p.m., just her and an elderly couple sharing noodles in comfortable silence. The bell above the door chimed. Maya looked up reflexively, and her heart stopped. 4 men entered. Not the same ones from the train 2 weeks ago, but cut from the same cloth. Young, aggressive, wearing expensive streetwear that screamed money from sources that weren't employment. They scanned the restaurant with predatory assessment. Their eyes landed on Maya, and something shifted in their expressions. Recognition. One of them, tall, with a tattoo crawling up his neck, smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Yo," he said, moving toward her table. "You're that girl from the train, the one who thinks she's a hero." Maya's hand tightened around her spoon. "I don't want any trouble. Neither did our boy Marco. But you got him sent out of Chicago. Made him look weak in front of his people." The tall one leaned against her table, invading her space. "That ain't cool, mister." Nugent emerged from the kitchen, his expression concerned. "Everything okay here? We're just talking to our friend." Another one of the men positioned himself near the door. "Private conversation. Why don't you go back to cooking?" "Mister?" Nguyen looked at Maya, questions in his eyes. She gave a tiny shake of her head. "Don't get involved. Don't make this worse." He retreated reluctantly into the kitchen. "Smart man." The tall one turned his attention back to Maya. "Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to come with us. Walk out nice and quiet. We got some questions about your new friend, the one who thinks he can protect you. I'm not going anywhere with you." Maya's voice shook, but she kept it steady. "And I don't know anything about anyone's protection. See, that's a lie." He leaned closer, and Maya smelled cigarettes and cologne and threat. "Word is Dante Romano put you under his protection. Made real clear that anyone who touches you answers to him. That true?" Maya's mind raced. If she confirmed it, would they back off? Or would that make things worse? "I don't know what you're talking about." "Wrong answer." The tall one grabbed her arm, yanking her to her feet. Maya's chair clattered backward. Her sketchbook fell to the floor, pages scattering. "Let go of me." Maya tried to twist away, but his grip was iron. The other 3 men moved closer, forming a wall between her and the exit. This was happening. Actually happening. In broad daylight in a restaurant she'd eaten at for 3 years, these men were going to take her. Maya did the only thing she could think of. She screamed. The sound tore through the quiet restaurant. Mr. Nguyen burst from the kitchen, phone in hand. "I'm calling police. Call them." The tall one yelled back, already dragging Maya toward the door. "They won't get here in time." Maya fought. She kicked, clawed, twisted with every ounce of strength. But there were 4 of them and 1 of her, and they were stronger, bigger, more practiced at violence. They got her through the door and onto the sidewalk. A black SUV waited at the curb, engine running. This was planned, coordinated. Maya's terror crystallized into clarity. She had maybe seconds before they got her into that vehicle. Once she was inside, she was gone. She went limp suddenly, dead weight in the tall one's grip. He stumbled, and Maya used that split second to wrench one arm free and rake her nails across his face. He swore, releasing her. Maya ran. Not toward the street, where the SUV waited. Toward the alley behind the restaurant. It was stupid, running into an enclosed space with no exit, but it was instinct. Find cover. Hide. Survive. She heard them behind her. Footsteps pounding. Voices yelling. The alley was narrow, lined with dumpsters and fire escapes. Maya ran faster than she'd ever run, her lungs burning, her canvas bag bouncing against her hip. A hand caught her hair. Pain exploded through her scalp as she was yanked backward. Maya screamed again, clawing at the hand, at the arm, at anything she could reach. Then everything stopped. Not gradually, instantly, like someone had pressed pause on the world. The hand in her hair, released. The footsteps behind her halted. Even the city noise seemed to fade into background static. Maya spun around, gasping for breath. The four men stood frozen, but they weren't looking at her anymore. They were looking past her. At the mouth of the alley, at six figures that had appeared with such silence that they seemed to materialize from shadows. And at the center of those six figures stood Dante Romano. He didn't look angry. That would have been easier to understand. Instead, he looked calm. Perfectly, terribly calm. Like he was observing something mildly interesting rather than a kidnapping in progress. But his eyes, those dark eyes that had studied her with curiosity and intensity at the museum, were now cold, empty. The eyes of someone who had made a decision and nothing in the world would change it. "Maya," he said quietly. His voice carried through the alley despite barely rising above conversational volume. "Come here." Maya didn't think. She moved, past the four men who'd tried to take her, past their frozen terror, directly to Dante's side. He didn't touch her, but one of his men, the older one with gray in his hair, immediately positioned himself between Maya and the four kidnappers. Dante walked forward slowly. The five men with him fanned out, blocking any escape from the alley. It was choreographed, practiced. They'd done this before. "Gentlemen," Dante's voice remained conversational, "I believe you have made a significant error in judgment." The tall one, the leader, tried to summon bravado. "Romano, we were just attempting to kidnap a woman under my explicit protection," Dante finished. "In broad daylight, in a public restaurant, after I made very clear what the consequences would be for anyone who touched her." He stopped 3 feet away from them. "Tell me, do you work for Castellano, or are you freelancing?" Silence. "I asked a question." Dante's voice dropped to something dangerous. "When I ask questions, I expect answers. Immediately." "Castellano sent us," the tall one admitted. His voice had lost all its earlier confidence. "Said to bring her in. Said you were overstepping, claiming territory that wasn't yours to claim." "Overstepping?" Dante repeated the word like he was tasting it. "Interesting perspective. Let me offer you mine. This woman defended an elderly man on a train. That action brought her to my attention. I extended protection because she demonstrated qualities worth protecting. That's not territory. That's personal interest. There's a difference. Castellano don't see it that way. Then Castellano and I need to have a conversation." Dante pulled out his phone, dialed with deliberate slowness. Someone answered immediately. "It's Romano. You have 10 seconds to get on this call, or the 4 men you sent to kidnap Maya Chen die right now in this alley, and you'll be next." He waited. "Good. Now listen very carefully. You violated direct protection. You attempted to use an innocent woman as leverage in whatever territorial dispute you think we're having, and you did it publicly, which means every family in Chicago is now watching to see how I respond." Maya couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but she saw Dante's expression harden. "I don't care about your perception of disrespect. You created this situation by sending armed men after someone under my protection. So here's what happens next. These 4 men leave Chicago. Tonight. If I see them again, they die. You and I meet tomorrow to discuss boundaries and consequences, and you issue a citywide statement that Maya Chen is untouchable. Anyone who violates that answers to both of us. Those are my terms. They're non-negotiable." He listened for a moment, then he smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Maya had ever seen. "No, Castellano, you don't have leverage anymore, because if you push this, I'll start a war you can't win. And every family in Chicago will blame you for disrupting the peace over a civilian who has nothing to do with our business. So, you can accept my terms, or you can watch your organization collapse. Choose quickly." Dante hung up. Then he looked at the 4 men who'd tried to take Maya. "You have 6 hours to be out of Chicago. If you're still in city limits at midnight, my people will find you. And you won't enjoy what happens next." His voice was perfectly even. No anger, no threats, just absolute certainty. "Consider yourselves fortunate. Attempted kidnapping usually ends much worse. But I'm in a generous mood because Maya wasn't harmed. If she'd been hurt, we'd be having a very different conversation right now." The tall one nodded quickly. "We're gone. 6 hours. We understand." "Good." Dante gestured toward the alley exit. "Go. Now." They ran. Literally ran past Dante and his men, stumbling in their haste to escape. And then Maya was alone with 6 dangerous men in a narrow alley, and the adrenaline that had kept her moving crashed all at once. Her knees buckled. Dante caught her before she hit the ground. His arms wrapped around her, and for the first time, he touched her with something other than professional distance. He held her like she was fragile, Like she mattered. I've got you. His voice, right next to her ear, had transformed from cold authority to something almost gentle. You're safe now. I promise. You're safe. Maya was shaking so hard she thought she might fly apart. Tears she'd been holding back broke through, hot and mortifying. She pressed her face against Dante's chest, not caring that he was a mobster or that this was wrong or that she barely knew him. She'd almost been taken, almost been thrown in that SUV and disappeared. And he'd appeared exactly when she needed him most. How? Her voice came out broken. How did you know? I always know where you are. Dante's hand moved to her hair, carefully avoiding where the tall one had grabbed. My people reported suspicious activity near your location. I was 3 minutes away. But Maya, 3 minutes is too long. If you'd gotten in that vehicle, if they'd driven away before I arrived. His voice actually shook. That can't happen again. I don't understand what's happening. Maya pulled back enough to look at his face. Why would they come after me? I'm nobody. I'm just a teacher. You're somebody to me. Dante said it simply. And that makes you valuable to my enemies. Castellano wanted to send a message by taking you. Wanted to prove that my protection means nothing. I've just sent a message back. By threatening to start a war. By making clear that harming you isn't worth whatever point he thought he was making. Dante's hands cupped her face, tilting it up so she had to meet his eyes. You need to understand something, Maya. This isn't going to stop. As long as you're under my protection, people will test it. Try to find weakness. Try to use you as leverage. The only way to prevent that is to make the consequences so severe that no one dares try. Or you could just stop protecting me. Maya's voice cracked. Let me go back to being invisible. You can't go back. That option doesn't exist anymore. His thumbs brushed away her tears with surprising tenderness. But I can make sure everyone in Chicago knows that touching you means death. That's the language my world understands. Fear and consequences. I don't want people to die because of me. Then they shouldn't try to kidnap you. Dante said it like it was the simplest logic in the world. Maya, I need you to come with me now. Not as a captive, as a guest. I have a secure location where you'll be safe while I handle the fallout from this. A few days, maybe a week. Just until every family in Chicago receives the message clearly. I can't just disappear for a week. I have work, students, a life. Your students will be told you're taking emergency personal time. Your rent will be paid. Your responsibilities will be handled. But you can't go home right now. Your apartment isn't secure enough, and I won't risk Castellano sending more men. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to insist on her independence and her right to make her own choices. But she was still shaking, still feeling those hands grabbing her, dragging her toward that SUV. Okay, she whispered, a few days. But Dante, after this is handled, after everyone gets their message, you have to let me go. You have to let me try to go back to normal. Something flickered across his expression. Pain, maybe, or resignation. If that's what you want, he said quietly. After this is resolved, if you want me to disappear from your life, I'll do it. But Maya, normal might not be possible anymore. Not the way you remember it. He was right. She knew he was right. But she needed to believe that some part of her old life could be salvaged. Dante's hand found hers, warm and solid. Come on, the car is waiting. The secure location turned out to be a house in Lincoln Park that probably cost more than Maya would earn in her entire lifetime. Not a mansion. Exactly. Just a 3-story brownstone that looked historic and elegant from the outside. But inside, it was clearly designed for function over aesthetics. Security cameras, reinforced doors, windows that looked bulletproof. A prison that happened to have expensive furniture. The second floor is yours, Dante said, leading her up the stairs. Bedroom, bathroom, sitting room, everything you need. My people will bring your things from your apartment, clothes, art supplies, anything you want. How long do I stay here? Maya's voice sounded hollow even to herself. Until it's safe. 3 days, maybe 4. Dante opened a door to reveal a bedroom that was bigger than her entire apartment. King-size bed with luxury linens, expensive artwork on the walls, windows that looked out over a private garden. Beautiful, comfortable, a cage. There's food in the kitchen. Staff will prepare anything you want. You have internet access, phone, television. But Maya, he turned to face her fully. You can't leave, not until I say it's safe. Can you accept that? Could she? Did she have a choice? Yes, she said, because what else was there to say? Dante nodded. Then, surprising her, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was intimate, careful, nothing like the professional distance he'd maintained before. I need to handle things with Castellano now. I'll be back tomorrow. If you need anything at all, there's a phone on the nightstand. Press 1. It connects directly to me. Dante. Maya caught his hand before he could pull away. Thank you, for today. For coming when I needed you. I know I've been resistant to your protection, but if you hadn't been there. She couldn't finish the sentence. I'll always be there. He said it with such certainty that it sounded like a vow. That's what protection means, Maya. Not just preventing danger, but appearing exactly when you need me most. I won't fail you again. You didn't fail me today. I failed you by not making the consequences clear enough that Castellano thought he could try. His jaw tightened. That won't happen again. By tomorrow night, every family in Chicago will understand that you're untouchable. Not because you're territory or leverage or strategy. Because you're mine to protect, and I protect what's mine with absolute finality. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel something complicated and impossible to name. Get some rest, Dante said gently. I know today was traumatic. Let yourself process it. Cry, scream, break things if you need to. This is a safe space for that. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Maya stood alone in the luxurious bedroom and finally let herself fall apart. She woke in the middle of the night, gasping from a nightmare where hands pulled her into darkness and no one came to help. The bedroom was unfamiliar, expensive sheets twisted around her legs. It took several panicked seconds to remember where she was. Dante's safe house. Protected, secure, alone. Maya got up, wrapped herself in the robe she'd found in the bathroom, and wandered downstairs. The house was silent, but she'd noticed the security cameras. Someone was watching. She was never truly alone. The kitchen was all marble and stainless steel. Maya found tea bags and made herself chamomile, letting the familiar ritual calm her nerves. Can't sleep? Maya spun around, nearly dropping her mug. Dante stood in the kitchen doorway. He'd changed from the suit he'd worn earlier, now dressed in dark pants and a t-shirt that revealed forearms marked with scars she hadn't noticed before. He looked tired. Human. Less like a crime boss and more like a man who'd had a very long day. I didn't know you were here, Maya said. I thought you'd be handling things with Castellano. I handled things. We came to an understanding. Dante moved into the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water. And I live here. This is my house. I told you it was a secure location. I didn't mention it was also my home. Maya blinked. I'm staying in your house? In the guest wing. I'm on the 3rd floor. Separate spaces, separate bathrooms. You have privacy. He leaned against the counter, studying her. Does it bother you, knowing I'm here? Honestly, it should. But instead, Maya felt something like relief. No, she admitted. Actually, it's better than being alone. After today. The nightmares? She nodded. How did you know? Because I get them too. After violence. After close calls. The adrenaline eventually crashes, and your mind processes everything you didn't have time to feel in the moment. Dante's voice was surprisingly gentle. It gets better. Not quickly, but eventually. They stood in the quiet kitchen, drinking their respective beverages, and somehow it felt more intimate than any conversation they'd had before. Tell me about Castellano, Maya said finally. What happened after you took me here? We met. Neutral location. Both of us with limited security. I explained that attempting to use you as leverage was unacceptable and would result in consequences neither of us wanted. He explained that he felt disrespected by my extension of protection into areas he considers his influence. We negotiated. What kind of negotiation involves kidnapping? The criminal kind. Dante's mouth twisted. In my world, everything is negotiation backed by threat. Castellano wanted to test my commitment, see if protecting you was worth actual conflict. I made clear that it was. More than worth it. That I would burn down half the city before I'd let anyone harm you. That's insane. That's love. The word hung in the air between them. Maya's breath caught. What? Dante set down his water glass with careful precision. When he looked at her, his eyes held something raw and unguarded. I've spent 3 months watching you, Maya. Learning who you are, what you value, how you move through the world with this relentless kindness despite every reason to become cynical. And somewhere in those 3 months, watching turned into wanting, and wanting turned into something more complicated. He moved closer, slowly, giving her space to retreat if she wanted. I'm not good at this. Feelings, emotional honesty, anything that isn't strategy and control. But you asked what happened with Castellano. And the truth is, I threatened him with war because the thought of you being hurt makes me capable of anything, including things I'd normally consider irrational and destructive. Maya's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. You barely know me. I know everything about you. Dante said it simply. I know you eat the same $7 lunch every Tuesday because it's delicious and affordable. I know you send money to your parents, even though they barely acknowledge your existence. I know you've taught yourself to see beauty in ordinary moments because art is how you make sense of the world. I know you're brave and reckless and kind in ways that terrify me because kindness makes you vulnerable. I know you better than anyone in your life knows you, Maya. The question isn't whether I know you. It's whether you'll let yourself know me. You're a criminal. It came out weak, defensive. Yes, and you're an artist who believes people deserve dignity regardless of their circumstances. We're opposites in every way that should matter. But somehow, we're here. In my kitchen, at 2 a.m., having a conversation that probably shouldn't be happening but feels inevitable. Maya's hands shook around her tea mug. This was madness. Everything about this situation was impossible. But standing in this kitchen with Dante Romano, seeing the vulnerability he was offering her, Maya realized something terrifying. She didn't want to run. I don't understand what you want from me, she whispered. I want you safe. I want you happy. I want you to continue being exactly who you are without fear or compromise. Dante's hand reached out slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek with devastating gentleness. And selfishly, I want you to see me as something more than the criminal who disrupted your life. I want you to see the man who would protect you against anything, who would give you the world if you'd let him, who has never felt this way about anyone and doesn't entirely know what to do with it. This is crazy. Yes, he agreed. Completely insane. You threatened to start a war over me. I did. And I'd do it again. We're from completely different worlds. We are. But our worlds collided on a train 2 weeks ago, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since. Maya set down her tea mug with shaking hands. Every rational part of her brain screamed warnings, but her heart, traitorous thing, was doing something entirely different. I'm not saying yes to anything, she said carefully. I'm just not saying no. Not yet. Is that okay? Dante's smile was genuine, unguarded, transforming his entire face. That's more than okay. That's hope, Maya. And I haven't had hope about anything personal in a very long time. His hand still touched her face, warm and solid. Maya leaned into it slightly, unable to stop herself. What happens now? She asked. Now you stay here until it's safe. We figure out this complicated thing between us. We see if opposite worlds can find common ground. His thumb traced her cheekbone. And I do everything in my power to be worthy of however much trust you're willing to give me. That's a lot of uncertainty. Life is uncertain, Maya. The only certainty I can offer is that I'll protect you, value you, and never lie to you about who I am or what my world involves. The rest we'll figure out together. It wasn't a promise of safety or normalcy. It wasn't a guarantee of happiness. But somehow, standing in this kitchen with a man who'd just threatened war to keep her safe, it felt like enough. For now, it felt like enough. 3 days in Dante's house transformed into something Maya hadn't expected. Not imprisonment, partnership. Dante worked from home those 3 days, handling business from the office on the 3rd floor. But he took breaks to check on her, to eat meals together, to sit in the garden while she sketched and he read reports. They talked. About everything. Her childhood in California, middle child in a family that barely noticed her. His upbringing in Chicago, groomed from birth to take over his grandfather's empire. Her dreams of opening her own art gallery someday. His exhaustion with violence and desire to transition the family business into something legitimate. It's possible, he said on the 2nd evening, sitting across from her in the garden. Legal businesses, investment portfolios, real estate development. My grandfather built this empire on crime, but it doesn't have to stay that way. I've been working on it for 2 years. Slowly transitioning, finding legitimate income streams, reducing our dependence on illegal operations. Why? Maya set down her charcoal, interested. I mean, if crime is lucrative, why change? Because I'm tired, Dante said it simply. Tired of violence. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of hurting people to maintain power. My father loved it. The fear and respect and absolute control. but I've never wanted that. I want to build something that doesn't require bloodshed to maintain. Then why not just walk away? Because walking away creates a power vacuum. Other families would fight to fill it. That would mean war, civilian casualties, chaos, so I'm dismantling it carefully, transitioning piece by piece. In 5 years, maybe 10, the Romano family will be completely legitimate. But until then, I maintain control through the old methods, because that's what keeps the peace. Maya studied his face, seeing the exhaustion there. That sounds lonely. It is. His dark eyes met hers. Until recently, I thought that was just the cost of this life. But then I watched a woman feed a homeless veteran her only meal, and I realized maybe loneliness wasn't inevitable. Maybe I'd just been looking in the wrong places for connection. Her heart did that complicated thing again, skipped and fluttered and betrayed her completely. On the third night, Maya's roommates called. She'd been texting them, saying she was helping a friend with a family emergency, but Alex, the one she was actually close to, wasn't buying it. Maya, are you okay? Really okay? Because you disappear for 3 days with vague texts, and I'm worried. I'm fine, I promise. I'll explain everything when I get back. Is this about that guy? The one Sarah mentioned? The one who's been interested in you? Maya glanced at Dante, sitting across the kitchen island, pretending not to listen. Kind of. It's complicated. Complicated good or complicated bad? Honestly, both. But I'm safe, Alex. I'm actually safer than I've been in a long time. Just trust me, okay? After she hung up, Dante raised an eyebrow. Complicated good? Don't let it go to your head. But Maya was smiling. That night, after dinner, Dante had made pasta with surprising competence. They sat in the living room. Maya sketched while Dante worked on his laptop, and the domestic normalcy of it struck her suddenly. This felt comfortable, right, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. Can I see? Dante asked, nodding toward her sketchbook. Maya hesitated, then handed it over. He studied the drawings in silence. She'd been sketching him without really thinking about it. His profile as he read, his hands on the keyboard. The way he looked out at the garden with that expression of tired contemplation. You draw me the way you draw everyone, he said finally, searching for the essence beneath the surface. What do you see when you look at me, Maya? Who am I to you? Someone who's trying, she said honestly. Someone carrying weight he didn't ask for, trying to be better than his circumstances require. Someone lonely and powerful and surprisingly gentle when he thinks no one's watching. Dante closed the sketchbook carefully. That's more generous than I deserve. Or exactly what you deserve. Maya met his eyes. You've been honest with me about who you are. The criminal part, the violent part, all of it. You haven't tried to sanitize it or make it pretty. That honesty matters. Does it matter enough? The question was vulnerable, unguarded. Because eventually, you'll have to decide, Maya. Whether this us is something you can accept. Whether knowing what I am, what I've done, is something you can live with. I don't know yet, Maya admitted. But I'm not running. That has to count for something. It counts for everything. He crossed the space between them, kneeling in front of where she sat on the couch. His hands found hers, warm and solid. I need you to understand something, Dante said quietly. If you choose this, choose me, you're choosing all of it. The protection, yes, but also the danger. The security, but also the surveillance. The resources, but also the attention. I can't make my world safe for you, Maya. I can only make you safe within it. That's a critical difference. I understand. Do you? His dark eyes searched her face. Because once you're truly part of my life, not just under protection but actively choosing to be with me, there's no going back to invisible. You'll be visible forever. To my people, to my enemies, to law enforcement. Your life will never be private again. Maya's heart raced. This was it. The moment where she could step back, thank him for the protection, and return to her ordinary life. Where she could be smart and careful and safe. Or she could be brave, reckless, choose something impossible. I'm not saying yes to forever, Maya said carefully. I'm saying yes to seeing what this could be, to not running just because it's complicated and dangerous, to giving us a chance. Dante's expression transformed. Hope, relief, something that might have been love, all mixed together in a way that made him look younger, vulnerable. That's enough, he said. More than enough. He leaned forward slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When Maya didn't move, when she actually leaned closer, his lips found hers. The kiss was gentle at first, careful, like he was afraid she'd break. But Maya's hands moved to his face, pulling him closer, and the gentleness shifted into something more desperate. 3 months of watching, 2 weeks of complicated protection, 3 days of learning each other. It all crystallized into this moment where two impossible people admitted that maybe, just maybe, impossible wasn't the same as wrong. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "We're going to figure this out," he said. "However complicated it gets, whatever challenges come, we'll face them together. Promise?" "I promise." On the 4th day, Dante declared it safe for Maya to return home. Castellano issued the statement. "Every family in Chicago knows you're untouchable. I've had confirmation from 5 different sources that the message was received and understood." He helped her pack the few things she'd accumulated. "But Maya, I need you to accept enhanced security, at least for the next few months." "What does that mean?" "It means someone from my organization will always know where you are. Not intrusive surveillance, just awareness. It means upgrading your apartment's security. It means I'll probably insist on driving you places more often than you'd prefer." His mouth twisted. "I know it sounds controlling, but after Tuesday, after seeing how close they got to taking you, I can't risk being 3 minutes away again." "What if you're 30 minutes away? An hour? You can't always be nearby, Dante. Watch me." He said it with complete seriousness. "I've restructured my entire schedule around your safety, Maya. Where you go, I'll be close. Not obviously, not intrusively, but close enough to respond if needed. It should feel suffocating. Instead, it felt like someone actually giving a damn whether she lived or died." "Okay," Maya agreed. "Enhanced security, upgraded apartment, your people watching. But I need my independence too, Dante. I need to be able to go to work, see friends, live my life without feeling like I'm in a glass box. You'll have independence within reasonable safety parameters." He pulled her close. "I'm not trying to control you, Maya. I'm trying to keep you alive." She believed him. The drive back to her apartment felt surreal. Returning to ordinary life after 4 days in a brownstone that cost millions, sitting beside a mobster she'd somehow started falling for. "This is insane," Maya said out loud. Dante's hand found hers. Completely, but the best things usually are. Her apartment looked exactly the same. Her roommates were both out, leaving Maya alone with Dante as he walked through every room, checking locks, examining windows, making notes on his phone. "I'll have new locks installed tomorrow. Security camera for the main entrance." "And Maya," he pulled a phone from his pocket, different from the one she already had. "This is a secure line. My number is the only one programmed. If anything happens, anything at all, you call me immediately. You're giving me a bat phone? I'm giving you a direct connection to me that can't be traced or intercepted. Keep it charged. Keep it close." His expression was deadly serious. "Promise me." "I promise." Dante seemed satisfied, but he didn't leave. Instead, he moved to her tiny kitchen, looked at her nearly empty fridge, and shook his head. "When's the last time you had real groceries?" "Define real." "More than ramen and peanut butter." Maya laughed despite herself. "It's been a while." 20 minutes later, Dante had ordered enough groceries to fill her fridge and cabinets completely. High-quality food that Maya normally couldn't afford. When she tried to protest, he just looked at her. "You teach children art and send money to parents who don't appreciate you. You've been surviving on poverty wages and dedication. Let me do this, Maya. Let me make sure you're actually fed properly." How could she argue with that? Before he left, Dante pulled her close one more time. His kiss was different now. Not desperate, but certain, like he was claiming something precious. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said against her lips. "Same train, same time. But I'll actually sit near you this time instead of watching from across the car." Bold move. Evolutionary. His smile was genuine. "Besides, I'm done watching from a distance. From now on, I'm right beside you. Get used to it." After he left, Maya stood in her tiny apartment that suddenly felt different. Safer, more secure, like Dante's presence had somehow changed the space itself. Her phone buzzed. The regular one, not the secure line. "Keisha, are you okay? You've been gone 4 days. We covered your classes, but the kids miss you." "Maya, I'm fine. Back tomorrow. I'll explain everything. But Keisha, I'm okay." "Better than okay." "Keisha, does this better than okay involve the man who made that donation?" "Maya, yes." "Keisha, Lord help you, child. Be careful, but also be happy. You deserve happy. Maya smiled at her phone. Be careful and be happy. 2 instructions that probably shouldn't coexist but somehow did. That night, she slept better than she had in weeks. No nightmares, no fear. Just the quiet certainty that someone powerful and dangerous had decided she mattered, and Maya was choosing to believe him. 6 months later, Maya stood in front of her class, helping Javier Martinez with shading technique on his latest dragon masterpiece, when Keisha appeared in the doorway with an expression that meant something significant was about to happen. Maya, can I see you for a minute? She stepped into the hallway expecting news about budget cuts or administrative issues. Instead, Keisha handed her an envelope. This came today, hand-delivered by a very polite man in a very expensive suit. Maya opened it. Inside was a letter on heavy cream stationery. Miss Chen, the Chicago Arts Council is pleased to offer you a solo exhibition at the Millennium Park Gallery this fall. The exhibition will feature your figurative drawings and will run for 6 weeks. We've been impressed by your work with children in underserved communities and believe your art deserves wider recognition. Details to follow. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. Maya read it 3 times. This is. She couldn't finish the sentence. Huge. Keisha finished. That's what this is. The Millennium Park Gallery is prestigious, Maya. This is career-making. Maya knew immediately who was behind it. Not because the letter said so, but because 6 months with Dante Romano had taught her how he worked. Subtle support. Opportunities that appeared like coincidence but were anything but. After her shift, she took the train to his office. The legitimate one, in a high-rise downtown where Romano Enterprises handled real estate development and investment portfolios. The receptionist recognized her immediately. Miss Chen, Mr. Romano said to send you right up. His office was all glass and chrome, overlooking Lake Michigan. Dante stood at the window, phone to his ear, conducting business in that calm, authoritative voice she'd learned, meant he was handling something important. He ended the call when he saw her, his expression transforming into genuine warmth. Maya, this is a nice surprise. The gallery exhibition. She held up the letter. This was you. The gallery reached out because they were genuinely impressed by your work. I may have facilitated the connection, but the decision was theirs. Dante moved closer. And before you get upset about me interfering, consider this. You're talented, Maya. Genuinely, remarkably talented. All I did was make sure the right people saw your portfolio. The rest is your skill. You can't just buy me a career. I'm not buying you anything. I'm opening doors that should have been open already but weren't because you've been too busy surviving to network. His hands cupped her face. Let me help you, Maya. Not because you need saving, but because your art deserves to be seen. She wanted to argue. But the truth was, she'd been dreaming of an opportunity like this for years. And if Dante's connections could make it happen, was that really so different from any other networking? Okay, she said finally. But no more surprise interventions. If you're going to help, we discuss it first. Deal. He kissed her gently. Though I make no promises about surprise gifts. Those are non-negotiable. They'd settled into a rhythm over the past 6 months. Maya kept her apartment and her independence. Dante respected her boundaries while maintaining the security he needed for his peace of mind. They were navigating 2 worlds, finding where they overlapped, learning how to make impossible work. It wasn't easy. Dante's world kept intruding business associates at restaurants, security protocols that sometimes felt excessive, the constant awareness that they were watched by people on both sides of the law. But it was also beautiful. Stolen moments in art galleries, quiet dinners at his house, the way he listened when she talked about her students, the way she'd learned to read his silences and understand when business had been particularly violent or difficult. I have something for you, Dante said, pulling a small box from his desk drawer. Maya's heart stuttered. If that's an engagement ring, we need to have a serious conversation about pacing. He laughed. Actually laughed. It's not a ring. Though for the record, when I do propose, you'll know it's coming. Inside the box was a key, the brownstone, Dante explained. I'm officially giving you a key, not because I expect you to move in immediately, but because I want you to know you're always welcome. Always have a place that's safe. My home is your home, whenever you want it to be. Maya took the key with shaking hands. It was heavy, antique-looking, similar to the medallion Alberto had given her all those months ago. Protection, safety, belonging. Thank you, she whispered. No, Maya. Thank you. Dante pulled her close, and she fit against him like puzzle pieces finally connecting. Thank you for choosing this. For choosing me. For being brave enough to see past what I do to who I am underneath. You make it easy. I really don't. But he smiled when he said it. They stood together in his office, watching the city stretch out below them. Two people from impossible worlds who'd found a common ground in courage and kindness, and the willingness to risk everything for something real. 6 months ago, Maya had defended a stranger on a train. Today, she was falling in love with the dangerous man who'd been watching her all along. And somehow, impossibly, it was exactly right. The Millennium Park Gallery exhibition opened on a crisp October evening. Maya stood among her drawings, watching strangers study her work with genuine interest. Every piece was someone she'd observed on the train, in her classes, on the streets of Chicago. Ordinary people captured in moments of dignity and humanity. Alberto Ruiz was there, standing in front of the drawing she'd made of him that day on the train. His daughter stood beside him, both of them dressed formally for the occasion. "You captured my father's soul," the daughter said, tears in her eyes. "This is beautiful." Grace and several other children from her classes attended with their families, delighted to see their teacher celebrated this way. Keisha stood near the entrance, beaming with pride. And Dante stood slightly apart from the crowd, watching her with an expression that made her heart ache. Love, pride, protectiveness, all mixed together. He wasn't hiding their connection anymore. Let people see. Let them know that Maya Chen, artist and teacher, was the woman who'd somehow captured the attention of one of Chicago's most dangerous men. Toward the end of the evening, Dante approached the drawing that had become the exhibition's centerpiece. Not one of the train passengers or students. This one was different. It was Dante himself, drawn from memory across dozens of sketches, compiled into a single portrait, but she'd drawn him not as the mobster everyone saw, but as the man she'd learned he was underneath. Tired, hopeful, trying. The title read simply, "Protected." "I didn't give you permission to expose me like this," Dante said, but his voice held humor. "You said I could draw anyone." Maya slipped, her hand into his. "And you're someone, Dante. Someone important." He kissed her temple, uncaring who saw. "You've changed everything, Maya Chen. My priorities, my perspective, my entire life. You know that, right? I'm starting to realize." As the gallery began to empty, Maya took a final look around. 6 months ago, she'd been a broke teacher worried about eviction, invisible to everyone except the children she taught. Now she was an artist with a career, a woman under powerful protection, someone falling in love with a man who'd literally threatened war to keep her safe. It was insane, impossible, everything she'd never expected. And somehow, standing in a gallery full of her art, Dante's hand in hers, the city stretching out beyond the windows with all its danger and beauty and possibility. It was perfect. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.